Four teenage girls went to work at a yogurt shop in Austin, Texas on the night of December 6, 1991. By morning, the store was burned. Inside, all four were found bound and executed. In the years that followed, innocent people confessed to crimes they didn't commit. DNA would later prove they were telling the truth. No one was ever held accountable. This is the story of the yogurt shop murders, a case where the search for justice may have failed beyond repair. December 6, 1991 is a Friday night in Austin, Texas. For four teenage girls, it is nothing more than another shift at work, a few hours serving frozen yogurt, earning spending money, and planning the weekend ahead. The city is busy, alive with holiday shoppers and Friday night routines. Nothing about the evening feels dangerous. Nothing feels out of place. The I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop sits in a busy strip mall on Anderson Lane in North Austin, brightly lit and visible from the parking lot. It's the kind of place that feels safe by default, public, familiar, ordinary. On this night, four young people are working the closing shift. Jennifer Harbison is 17, a responsible senior at Lanier High School. Her sister, Sarah, is 15, a sophomore who often works alongside her. Eliza Thomas, also 17, is their friend and classmate. Amy Ayers is 13, younger than the others, not scheduled to work, just stopping by to spend time with their friends before heading home. In 1991, this feels normal, safe, unremarkable. The evening passes without incident. Customers come and go. The girls clean counters, ring up purchases, talk quietly between orders. They are visible through the shop's large windows, surrounded by other open businesses and passing cars. No arguments, no disturbances, no warning signs. Around 11 o'clock, the shop closes. The door is locked. Registers are counted. Floors are mopped. These are routines the girls have performed countless times before. According to later witnesses, nothing seems wrong. The last customers remember them as relaxed, calm, entirely at ease. What happens next occurs in the space between closing and discovery, in the hours when the lights are off and no one is watching. Somewhere between locking the front door and the following morning, four teenage girls who should have gone home instead become victims of unimaginable violence. They never leave the shop, they never make it home, and by the time anyone realizes something is wrong, it is already far too late. The morning of December 7th, 1991, begins like any other Saturday in a busy shopping district. Employees arrive for work. Stores prepare to open. Shortly before 9 a.m., a man near the yogurt shop notices smoke seeping from the building. The smell is sharp, unmistakably wrong. He calls 911. Firefighters arrive within minutes. When they reach the yogurt shop, they find the front door unlocked. Inside, the fire has already burned itself out, leaving thick smoke and heavy damage behind. As firefighters move deeper into the building, it becomes clear this is not just a fire. In the back room, they find four bodies. The firefighters retreat immediately and contact police. The Austin Police Department secures the scene, now unmistakably a homicide investigation. Despite the fire damage, investigators quickly understand the scale of what has happened. All four girls have been bound. Each has been shot in the head at close range, execution style. Some show signs of strangulation. The killings are controlled and deliberate, not chaotic. This was not a robbery gone wrong. Evidence of sexual assault is present despite the fire. The victims were violated before or during their deaths. The combination of rape, restraint, execution-style gunshots, and arson points to a crime that required time, privacy, and intent. The fire itself was set deliberately, using accelerants to destroy evidence. But fire does not erase everything. Shell casings remain, ligatures remain,
Biological material survives in protected areas. The scene is damaged, but not beyond investigation. By Saturday afternoon, the victims are identified. Jennifer Harbison, 17, Sarah Harbison, 15, Eliza Thomas, 17, Amy Ayers, 13. 4 girls who went to work on a Friday night and never came home. As news spreads, Austin is shaken. If this can happen in a brightly lit yogurt shop in a busy strip mall, then nowhere feels safe. Ordinary life suddenly feels fragile, and 4 families begin a grief that will never truly end.
By Saturday evening, the yogurt shop murders dominate every news broadcast in Austin and begin spreading across the national media. The story has all the elements that refuse to let go of public attention: young victims, sexual violence, execution-style killings, and a crime that appears to have happened without warning or reason. Television cameras line the strip mall parking lot. Reporters speak to stunned business owners and shaken customers. The yogurt shop becomes a makeshift memorial, flowers and stuffed animals accumulating outside a place that only hours earlier had been entirely ordinary. Austin is not prepared for this kind of horror. In 1991, the city still carries a sense of approachability, a belief that while crime exists, something this brutal belongs elsewhere. The randomness of the murders terrifies people. If 4 teenage girls can be killed at their workplace in a busy shopping center on a Friday night, then no routine is safe. No place is neutral. Parents begin questioning freedoms that had never before felt dangerous. Teenagers feel the city close in around them. Almost immediately, the pressure on the Austin Police Department becomes intense and unrelenting. City officials hold press conferences promising swift justice. Newspaper editorials demand results. Television anchors ask how something like this could happen, and more importantly, who allowed it to happen. The families of the victims, still in shock, look to law enforcement for answers that do not yet exist. Inside the department, investigators understand that this case is no longer just a homicide investigation. It has become a public reckoning. The city wants reassurance. The media wants progress. The families want accountability. And every hour without an arrest deepens the sense that something is slipping out of control. Fear spreads quickly. Parents restrict their children's movements. Teenagers who once worked late shifts are pulled back home. Women describe a growing awareness of vulnerability, the understanding that what happened to the 4 girls could have happened to them. The yogurt shop stops being a crime scene and becomes a symbol, a reminder that visibility does not guarantee safety, that violence can occur even under bright lights and public windows. Detectives continue working the case methodically, but the environment around them is no longer neutral. Every decision is made under scrutiny. Every delay feels like failure. Hundreds of tips pour in from the public, each one demanding attention, each one carrying the hope that it might finally explain what happened inside the shop after the doors were locked. As days pass without an arrest, frustration grows louder. The public wants certainty. The media wants names. Politicians want reassurance that control has not been lost. And within that pressure, the investigation begins to change shape. The careful, patient work required to solve a complex crime starts to collide with the demand for answers now. It is in this atmosphere, charged with fear, grief, and expectation, that the yogurt shop investigation enters its most dangerous phase. Not because the evidence is gone, not because the case is unsolvable, but because the weight of public pressure begins to bend the process itself. And once that happens, mistakes no longer look like mistakes. They begin to look like solutions. From the very beginning, the investigation into the yogurt shop murders begins to fracture. Not because investigators did not care, but but because the case immediately overwhelms the system meant to solve it. Austin police are suddenly facing a crime of unprecedented scale. 4 victims, sexual violence, arson, and intense national attention. The pressure is immediate, relentless, and destabilizing. The crime scene itself presents problems that can never be undone. The fire destroys evidence before investigators arrive. Water used to extinguish the flames washes over surfaces that might have preserved fingerprints or trace material. Firefighters, acting appropriately, move through the building to ensure safety, unknowingly disturbing what police will later struggle to reconstruct. From the start, investigators are working with evidence that has already been compromised. In the first hours, the scene grows more crowded. Numerous law enforcement personnel enter the yogurt shop as the magnitude of the crime becomes clear. Each entry increases contamination risk. New DNA, new fingerprints, new disturbances layered over the original evidence. Protocols exist, but chaos does not respect procedure. Later, analysts will have to question not just what evidence shows, but whether it can be trusted at all. Evidence is collected, but under urgency rather than ideal conditions. Shell casings and ligatures are documented, yet the complexity of the scene demands time that investigators do not feel they have. The mall must reopen, the bodies must be removed, the city demands progress. And so evidence collection moves forward faster than it should, increasing the risk that something critical is missed forever. Forensics offer hope, but little clarity. DNA is recovered, but in 1991, the technology is slow and limited. Samples are sent away, results take months, and even when profiles exist, they are useless without suspects to compare them to. Fingerprints face the same limitation. Dozens are lifted, most belonging to customers or employees, the rest unidentified and unresolved. Witnesses generate hundreds of tips. Some report suspicious people, others describe strange vehicles or sounds. Each lead requires time, interviews, follow-up. Detectives chase possibilities that dissolve under scrutiny, consuming energy while producing no clear suspects. The investigation grows larger, not sharper. As weeks pass without arrests, frustration builds. The case file thickens, but answers do not emerge. The DNA matches no one. The fingerprints lead nowhere. Surveillance footage reveals movement, but no certainty. Every avenue seems to end in ambiguity. Public pressure intensifies. Families want justice. Media demands updates. Politicians expect results. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the investigation begins to change. Patience gives way to urgency. Method gives way to hope for resolution. This is the moment the case becomes vulnerable, not because the truth is unreachable, but because desperation begins to guide decisions. The search for truth starts to compete with the need for an ending. And once that happens, the damage is no longer theoretical. It is inevitable.
Years pass without arrests in the yogurt shop murders. The case remains open, but momentum fades. For the families, grief hardens into something heavier, the slow realization that justice may never come. Within the Austin Police Department, the case becomes a symbol of failure, a reminder of unanswered questions and growing institutional pressure. In 1999, nearly 8 years after the murders, that pressure finally produces a turning point. Investigators focus on 4 young men: Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Wellborn. None have criminal records that point toward a quadruple murder. None have clear connections to the victims. But based on tips and renewed urgency, all 4 are brought in for questioning. What happens next will define the case for decades. Springsteen and Scott are interrogated for hours. Investigators use techniques that, at the time, are considered aggressive but acceptable. They minimize the crime. They suggest understanding. They imply evidence that does not exist. They tell the young men that cooperation is the only path forward. The interrogations are recorded, preserving a chilling record of psychological pressure applied over time. Eventually, both men confess. Their statements are detailed, disturbing, and convincing, exactly what investigators have been waiting for. The confessions appear to explain the crime, to fill in the gaps left by years of uncertainty. For the first time since 1991, it seems the yogurt shop murders may finally be solved. Pierce and Wellborn are charged based on those confessions. Press conferences follow. Headlines announce arrests. Families are told that justice is coming. After years of waiting, the system appears to be delivering answers. But the foundation is already cracking. Defense attorneys begin reviewing the interrogations and immediately raise alarms. The confessions contain inconsistencies. Details shift over time. Information appears only after investigators introduce it. And, most importantly, the confessions do not align with the physical evidence. DNA recovered from the crime scene does not match any of the accused. This is not a technicality. Biological material left during the assaults should identify the perpetrators. Instead, it excludes them entirely. Prosecutors argue that the DNA could belong to unknown accomplices. They insist that the confessions outweigh forensic contradictions. In court, the confessions win. Springsteen is convicted in 2001 and sentenced to death. Scott follows in 2002, also receiving a death sentence. Pierce and Wellborn are never tried. Their cases eventually dropped. For a brief moment, the yogurt shop murders are considered solved. But the truth refuses to stay buried. Appeals expose the confessions for what they are, products of coercion, confusion, and psychological exhaustion. Experts testify that innocent people can confess to crimes they did not commit, especially under sustained pressure. Analysts dissect the interrogation tapes, showing how narratives were shaped, guided, and reinforced by investigators rather than recalled independently. And the DNA never changes. In 2009, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals overturns both convictions. The court rules that the confessions were improperly obtained and unconstitutional. Springsteen and Scott are released after years on death row for crimes they did not commit. The yogurt shop murders are unsolved once again. But the damage is irreversible. 4 victims were murdered. 2 innocent men nearly executed. Families were given false closure. And the system failed, not once, but repeatedly, choosing resolution over truth, certainty over evidence. The case is no longer just about who committed the murders. It is about what happens when desperation replaces investigation.
The exonerations of Springsteen and Scott force the yogurt shop murders back into uncertainty. Everything the investigation once claimed to know collapses. If these men were innocent, then the case is not merely unsolved, it has been fundamentally misunderstood. The DNA evidence, long sidelined during the prosecutions, becomes central again. That biological material recovered from the victims represents the clearest connection to the actual killers. Whoever left it was present during the assaults and murders. Identifying that DNA should identify the perpetrators. By the late 2000s, advances in forensic science create renewed hope. DNA testing is faster, more sensitive, and far more precise than it was in 1991. National databases now contain millions of profiles. Evidence once considered too degraded can be analyzed again. Investigators believe that time and technology may finally succeed where the original investigation failed. But the results are devastatingly quiet. The DNA profile is compared repeatedly against national databases. No match emerges. Year after year, the evidence excludes everyone it is tested against. The conclusion becomes unavoidable. Whoever committed the yogurt shop murders has either never been arrested for another qualifying crime or has managed to remain completely outside the system for decades.
Investigators re-examine physical evidence from the crime scene, applying modern techniques to items collected in 1991. New profiles are extracted, old fingerprints are reanalyzed, but none of it leads to names, faces, or arrests. The case becomes scientifically advanced but practically frozen, rich in data, empty of answers. For the families, hope turns into something more painful. They are told that science will solve the case, that DNA never lies, that time is now working in their favor. Yet years pass without resolution. The evidence exists, it has been analyzed exhaustively, and still it points nowhere. The Austin Police Department keeps the case officially open. Detectives periodically review the file, follow up on tips, and retest evidence when possible. But without new information, progress is impossible. The investigation has reached the limits of what evidence and technology can provide. The damage, however, is already complete. 4 young women were murdered and never received justice. 2 innocent men lost years of their lives to wrongful convictions. Families endured grief, false closure, and renewed devastation. Investigators carry the knowledge that early mistakes created wounds that can never be fully repaired. The state of Texas eventually acknowledges the wrongful convictions, offering compensation to Springsteen and Scott. But no amount of money can restore stolen years or erase a death sentence imposed for a crime never committed. By 2024, more than 30 decades after the murders, the yogurt shop murders remain unsolved. The DNA is preserved, analyzed, and waiting. The case file grows thicker with time, and 4 lives remain defined not only by how they were taken, but by the enduring failure to hold anyone accountable. The science is ready. The evidence is still there, but the truth remains just out of reach.
In September 2024, the Austin Police Department announces what they describe as a significant breakthrough in the yogurt shop murders case. After more than 30 decades of investigation, advanced DNA analysis has identified a suspect. His name is Robert Eugene Brashers. He is dead, having taken his own life in 1999. The announcement brings a complicated mixture of relief and frustration to families who have waited more than 30 years for answers. Brashers emerges from investigative records as a serial offender with a documented history of violence across multiple states. In the years leading up to 1991, he was linked to sexual assaults and attacks on young women in several jurisdictions. His pattern of behavior aligns closely with the brutality inflicted on the yogurt shop victims. After the Austin murders, he continued committing violent crimes until a confrontation with police in 1999 ended with his suicide, closing any possibility of arrest or trial. The DNA evidence connecting Brashers to the crime scene is described by investigators as compelling. Advanced forensic testing, unavailable in earlier decades, allowed scientists to extract usable profiles from degraded biological material recovered from the victims. When compared against expanded databases, those profiles matched DNA associated with Brashers in other violent offenses, placing him at the scene and directly linking him to the sexual assaults that preceded the murders. Ballistics evidence provides further support. The victims were executed with a .22 caliber firearm, identified through shell casings recovered from the burned shop. While the specific weapon was never recovered, investigators determined that Brashers had access to and used similar firearms in other crimes. Taken together, the DNA and ballistic findings form a strong scientific case identifying Brashers as the primary perpetrator. For the families of Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Ayers, the identification of Brashers answers the most painful question: who killed their daughters? But offers only partial closure. Decades have passed. Years of grief were compounded by investigative failures and false hope. And because Brashers is dead, there will be no trial, no public reckoning, no moment in court where accountability is formally delivered. Questions also remain unresolved. Did Brashers act alone?
The scale and logistics of the crime, controlling 4 victims, binding them, assaulting them, executing them, and setting the scene on fire, raise the possibility of accomplices. Some forensic evidence suggests multiple contributors, but without Brasher's alive to question and without new physical evidence, these questions may never be conclusively answered. The identification of Brasher's also forces uncomfortable reflection. If modern DNA testing could identify him in 2024, could the case have been solved sooner? Did the wrongful focus on innocent suspects divert attention from the true perpetrator? These questions linger, unanswered, casting a shadow over claims of investigative success. For Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott, the announcement brings vindication long overdue. They spent years on death row for crimes they did not commit, condemned largely by false confessions extracted under coercive interrogation. The confirmation that Brasher's DNA was present at the scene all along underscores the scale of the failure, not just of investigation, but of judgment. The Austin Police Department acknowledges these failures while emphasizing that science ultimately revealed the truth. It is a conclusion reached too late for the victims, too late for the wrongly accused, and too late to deliver true justice. What remains is a name, a scientific certainty, and a case that stands as a cautionary reminder of how easily truth can be buried and how long it can take to recover it.
4 teenage girls went to work at a yogurt shop in Austin, Texas on December 6, 1991. Jennifer Harbison was 17. Sarah Harbison was 15. Eliza Thomas was 17. Amy Ayers was 13. They were daughters, sisters, and friends. Young lives just beginning, filled with ordinary hopes for the future. Instead, their lives ended in violence so brutal that it still shocks more than 30 years later. What followed was not just a murder investigation, but one of the most catastrophic failures in modern American criminal justice. A crime scene was compromised, evidence was mishandled, critical leads were missed, and under overwhelming pressure to solve the case, innocent men were prosecuted based on false confessions, spending years on death row while the real killer remained free. The system meant to deliver justice compounded the original crime with new injustices of its own. In 2024, the identification of Robert Eugene Brasher's finally answered the question of who committed the murders. But it was an answer that arrived decades too late. Brasher's had died in 1999, taking with him any possibility of trial, accountability, or confrontation. Science succeeded where the system failed, but science cannot deliver justice on its own. It cannot restore lost years, undo wrongful convictions, or repair the damage caused by institutional failure. The families of Jennifer, Sarah, Eliza, and Amy live with permanent loss. They endured decades of grief, false hope, and unanswered questions. Knowing who killed their daughters offers some measure of truth, but not the justice they were promised, and not the closure they deserved. Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott carry scars that will never fully heal. They lost years of their lives to false confessions and wrongful convictions, condemned for crimes they did not commit. Their exoneration proved what the evidence showed all along. The truth was there from the beginning, but it was ignored. This was not a perfect crime. The killer left DNA. He left evidence. The case should have been solved within months. Instead, it became a warning about tunnel vision, pressure, and what happens when institutions prioritize closure over truth. 4 girls died on December 6, 1991. Their killer was identified more than 30 years later, and in the decades between, the justice system failed nearly everyone involved. The yogurt shop murders remain not just a story of violence, but a lesson in how easily the truth can be lost, even when it is present from the beginning.
Cases like this one
remind us how fragile the line between ordinary life and unimaginable tragedy can be. If this story stayed with you, consider subscribing to the Unsolved Echoes. Some stories never truly end. Thank you for watching.